Luna. I'm the chairman of the Mountain View Commercial Property Association. We're the association that sponsored this event tonight. I'd like to thank the Mountain View Community Center for all their work in helping us set up for tonight. The Mountain View Commercial Property Association is a group of businessmen that started off with just a handful of businessmen starting a conversation over coffee and complain about our problems or talk about our problems. We decided we would be much more resourceful if we combined forces. So we organized the Mountain View Commercial Property Association with about 5 or 6 companies. Today, we're almost 100 companies strong in the Mountain View Commercial Property Association. Not only do we, as an organization, fight to protect our land rights, property rights, our rights to run our businesses, well, we also team up with the community center and help out a lot with the neighborhood association and the community center. The Mountain View Commercial Property Association, we were recently awarded the South Valley Citizen of the Year Award was issued to us. Okay, with that, I'm going to introduce Josh Skarsgård, also a member, key member of the Mountain View Commercial Property Association. He has been instrumental in our success. Josh Skarsgård, our mediator. Thank you.
I hope I don't have to mediate tonight. I'm going to moderate. You guys just take a moment. Sorry, can you hear me now? Let's do a pledge of allegiance real quick. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we're just going to get started. I want to remind everyone tonight that the MVCPA is a non-partisan association, non-profit association. There will be no endorsement of the candidates tonight, and the MVCPA will not be, it's not a political action. We will not be funding any candidates tonight, but we are excited about good governance. So I'd like to first introduce Mr. Pete Mitchell Jr., who is an environmental lawyer here in Albuquerque and has been born and raised in Albuquerque, went to Babylon, and he went to school of law. So please welcome Pete Mitchell Jr. Next, I'd like to introduce Colonel Alan Way. Colonel Alan Way is the president of CSI Aviation, a local businessman. He's also a decorated Marine and has served our country honorably for a number of years. Welcome. I'd like to next introduce Janice Arnold-Jones. She's the House Representative for Culture. She's the House Representative for District Number 24. She is also a small business owner, works for Energy Solutions, and has been a 4-term House of Representative member. Welcome, Ms. Arnold. Doug Turner is downtown where the traffic lights are knocked out because of the wind. He's on his way. He'll be here in a minute. Real quick, the debate rules are simple. No personal attacks. Ladies and gentlemen, try and keep your responses substantive, and but please, we open notice the GOP primary coming up in June, so do your best to distinguish yourself from the other candidates without having a personal attack. The questions will be assigned in a random order. Those questions have been assigned. There will be a 5-minute break after the first hour. The candidates will be asked at a 2-minute opening where you can speak about yourselves. What we ask the candidates to do in the 2-minute opening is to talk about their lives and their experiences and who they are as people who will hear their positions during the debate. So we ask that they introduce themselves as people during the first 2 minutes. We will have a lightning round where we ask questions of yes, no, or very small numbers of word answers. We'll do that after the first hour. As for the audience, please hold your applause or your boos until after a candidate has given their answer. So we do appreciate you being enthusiastic about the candidate's response, and so too. There's a couple of people I want to welcome here tonight. We have Mr. Simon Kubiak, who's running for the County Commission. Simon, are you here? Simon, welcome. Mr. David Barlow, Enterprise Village, he's running for the House District 23. Commissioner Arthur Cruz, is he here? GOP Chairman, Mr. Harvey Yates, and then, okay, Harvey. All right, let's get started. All right, the first question is going to be going to Mr. Domenici. The partisan bickering in Santa Fe has escalated dramatically in recent years, and it appears that the Democratic Party is going to have a majority in the legislature next year. How will your personality and your leadership style create bipartisan results in Santa Fe, especially in light of the GOP's minority position in the legislature? And how is your leadership style different than the other candidates?
So we're not going to introduce ourselves to start. I'm going to go into questions.
I apologize. You have 2 minutes to open. My fault. 2 minutes open.
Justin. Is that good? Okay. I'll save that question. Good evening, everyone. This is about the 10th forum that most of us have been at. But we have, generally speaking, we have a lot of fun and we learn a lot from each other. So tonight's the same. So to tell you a little about myself, I grew up in Albuquerque, sort of in the middle of Northeast Heights. I have a law degree at the University of New Mexico. I practice law in downtown Albuquerque. I have a statewide practice. Primarily, I work with businesses that are regulated by state and federal and local environmental laws in many cases. I happen to have, I'm just listing them here. Over my 25 years of practicing law, I've worked for at least a half dozen businesses in this neighborhood, going all the way back to, I don't know if some of you might remember RecChem, which was a chemical supply company about a mile down the road. That was one of my first and worst, most difficult cases. Since then, I've had many pleasant experiences with the business community here, and that wasn't particularly unpleasant, it was just very difficult. But most recently, I helped Wholesome get their air permit so they could operate and become part of the community. And we had a good interchange and dialogue with the neighborhood association as part of that matter. I represented Stoneworks, who had a sand and gravel operation out in the South Valley. And I think they ended up, even though they were controversial, ended up leaving that property much better off than when they started, which is one of the things I think is successful, makes for successful neighbors. I hope that's sort of your attitude as a business community and neighbors, is many of these properties with the right use and the right development can enhance the entire neighborhood. They can enhance the business and they can enhance the neighbors and the residents and the general community. So I have quite a bit of feeling and understanding of your specific community. I know there's people here from around other parts of Albuquerque. But I did just want to point that out. This is an important part of Albuquerque, and I know it's been a controversial part of Albuquerque for the last 5 or 10 years because of the proximity of businesses and residences. And I understand that makes for challenges and also creates opportunities. It sounds like your organization has taken advantage of that. Thank you. I look forward to visiting with you more.
Colonel Way. Thank you. Make sure, is this, can you hear me in the back? Oh, good, good. Nothing worse than a bad PA system when you're trying to make an impression. I'm Alan Way. I gotta say this twice, I don't have a sign. I am a candidate for governor of the next election office. Who am I? For those of you who I have not had the opportunity to talk to, I am a businessman, I'm a retired Marine, I'm a father, I should say I'm a husband of 41 years, I'm the same woman. That's important too sometimes. Some people. I'm a father, I'm a grandfather. Those are the essentially the three things that I talk about in my candidacy for governor in terms of who I am and my qualifications. I am not a career politician. I've never run for political office before. How often will you hear a politician or an aspiring politician tell you this is the only office he or she will run for? But I'm here to tell you this is the only office I'm running for. And if I'm elected your governor and my report card's good, I'll stand for re-election. Outside that, I'm not running for the Senate, I'm not running for Congress, and I'm not running for the presidency. So I'm running for the job that I'm seeking, and that's it. That's not unimportant because I don't mind telling people a year ago I was ambivalent on term limits. I got to tell you, I believe in term limits now for members of Congress and members of the legislature. I think that it's a bipartisan problem. We talked earlier about some of the inability to get along, the inability to legislate, the inability to govern, due to the deep chasm between two political parties that obviously we can't live like this. We can't move this country forward if this remains as is. So I believe in term limits. Now, on who I am, briefly, besides my business qualifications and my, which I'll talk about later, given the right question, and other things, just so you know a little bit about me. I'm pro-Second Amendment. That's the right to carry a firearm in the Second Amendment. I strongly believe in the 10th Amendment. That's the sovereignty of the state. To the extent that the federal government and unelected bureaucrats force things on the state when the state doesn't want things forced on it. That's essentially, and the governor has that responsibility. I'm pro-life, I'm pro-family, I'm opposed to any effort to change the definition of a marriage, anything other than being a man and a wife, a man and a woman. And I support the reenaction of the death penalty for egregious crimes. And I'm certainly open and willing to include it in when we ask for that legislation, that we insist on standards to ensure that the convicted criminal that would receive such a punishment is certified to have been found guilty as the right person. DNA and the other modern technology we've got today enables us to do that. But certainly a death penalty is appropriate in the case of egregious crime. So those are the kind of social things. We'll talk about a lot of things, but I just get them off the table. You know where I stand, and be prepared to answer any questions you have in the course of it. Thank you.
Representative Arnold-Jones.
Before I begin, can you hear me? A little shaky, huh? Let's try that again. Any better? A little more? This is good. Okay. Thank you. Sometimes we have to pot it up just a little bit. I'm Janice Arnold-Jones. I am a four-term representative from House District 24 in Bernalillo County. I serve on the House Taxation and Revenue Committee as well as the Voters and Elections Committee. Now, in spite of the fact that the press has dubbed me Lady Sunlight, and the Rio Grande Foundation awarded me the Lights of Liberty Award, and the Open Government Foundation has named me a recipient of the 2010 Award for Open Government, some of you don't know me. It's a good thing I have my American Express card. Now, my family moved to New Mexico in 1963 after my dad was killed testing a B-57 short-range bomber. My mom believed that the land of enchantment offered some extraordinary opportunities, including the opportunity to raise some Appaloosas. That's a little bit of a long story. I graduated from the old Albuquerque High School at Broadway and Central, and also from UNM. My husband, John, grew up in Santa Fe. He spent 23 years in the Navy. Now, while following John around the country, I had to create a career that has uniquely prepared me to serve you as governor. Now, as you might imagine, being a Navy wife means you have to plow the fields you're standing in. And that experience has led me to doing or selling everything from pole line hardware and switchgear, financial services, newspaper, radio, television, and jingles. I have written training manuals, support manuals, and information manuals. In one layover in San Diego, I opened 2 businesses, one an audio and video production company that lasted for over 20 years. I have even trained soccer coaches. And you know, until just recently when I decided to run for governor, I have been the manager of Parallax for DOE contractors. And I have taken that business over the last 10 years from 2 employees to 22 employees and some other part-time folks, a really exciting business, and I have been so privileged to be in business in New Mexico. But the point is, small business is the lifeblood of every state. It is absolutely the lifeblood of New Mexico. As governor, we will grow our private sector and make sure that our children's dreams include aspiring to owning a small business. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Arnold-Jones. I want to remind the candidates of 90-second answers. These first 11 questions will be asked of all of you in random order. So 90-second answers. If you exceed your time, I will say time and the microphone and you wrap it up. So, Mr. Domenici. The partisan bickering in San Diego has escalated recently, and the Democratic Party seems to be having a majority in the next legislature. How will your personality and leadership style create bipartisan results in San Diego, especially in light of the GOP's minority position? And how is your leadership style different than Colonel Way and Representative Arnold-Jones and Mr. Turner?
I've enjoyed working in this state for the last 25 years. Like many of you that are in business, many of you that are in different occupations, for all that time period, the legislature has been controlled by the Democratic Party, which means they set the agenda, they've set the regulatory guidelines for business in New Mexico, and I've had the opportunity to work and take clients and help clients navigate Santa Fe throughout that entire time period. That requires, at its heart, at its essence, working in a bipartisan manner, time after time after time. The many longtime state employees that I work with, many appointed cabinet secretaries, deputy cabinet secretaries are partisan. They're particularly these appointed positions. But the issues that I bring to them, just like you that own businesses in this community or throughout or work for them, those businesses are not partisan. They need to get permission to operate. They need to work with whoever's in those positions. So personal experience and success, and I've had a long string of success with businesses right up and down this street, working successfully in Santa Fe, which requires, just what the question asked, bipartisan success. And it requires, in some cases, taking action that would be adversarial, which the governor is going to have to do some of that. It requires threatening that. It requires negotiation skills. And I think in my situation, I think experience is what provides that basis. As far as comparing with the other 2 candidates, I don't want to particularly say that I know they're exactly how they would negotiate and deal with Santa Fe, so I would probably not comment on it.
Colonel Way, how will your personality and leadership style create bipartisan results in Santa Fe?
Built a business. For those of you who are business people, you understand this very simple truth. You cannot build a business successfully if you don't know how to build successful relationships. That's a fact. I have built successful relationships in building a business. And I have no doubt about my ability to build successful relationships with members of New Mexico State government, to include the longtime professional classified employees, to include members of the legislature, of which there are many dedicated, conscientious, serving elected officials of both parties. And it is my intent to build a coalition and a consensus in the legislature with a sufficient number of Democrats to obviously understand that New Mexico's problems are New Mexico's problems. They're not Democrat problems, they're not Republican problems, they're New Mexico's problems. There's enough people up there who get it. I have no doubt about my ability to build a coalition and enough people that will get some things done. Thank you.
Representative Arnold-Jones, how will your personality and leadership style create bipartisan results?
It's a great question. You know, having served in the legislature, I can tell you the first thing that I learned, and happens to match my style. You work the problem, not the party. And that is my reputation. I work the problem. Most of the problems in New Mexico have absolutely no party affiliation. And it's important to make sure that you operate in that manner. See, one of the other things that gives me a bit of a leg up is having served in the legislature, I understand the process that it takes to get to good policy. And I intend to lead that effort. Because good policy means that you have pulled in all of the affected parties. And when you think you have them all, you better look a little bit farther, because chances are you don't have everybody that's impacted. Imposing solutions without making sure that you have talked to the constituents is a way to fail. So the government comes in two pieces. One is the executive side. There is an agency part of leading this government that implements all of our policies. Those state employees should be respected. They should be expected to aspire to higher levels of performance. They should be rewarded for that performance and not denigrated, which seems to be our habit. They are our greatest assets. On the legislative side, it is absolutely true, and Colonel White said it very well. My colleagues in the legislature, by far, most of them are there for exactly the same reason that I am there, which is to serve New Mexico, to help us go forward, and I think that collaborative style is what makes a difference. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Turner. Mr. Turner, please give us a 30-second bio on you, followed by this question. You need to do it both in 90 seconds. Introduce yourself in 30 seconds as a person, and then you have 60 seconds to tell us how your leadership style and personality would create bipartisan results.
Right now you want the 30-second bio.
30 seconds followed by your leadership style.
Apologies for being late. I was busy picking up signs that were blown over by the wind.
Mr. Turner, the microphones are sensitive. Put it closer.
Apologies for being late. My name is Doug Turner. I'm also running for governor. I'm born and raised here in Albuquerque. I am a small business person, never worked in state government. I've never been elected to anything. I have two small children, a 3-year-old and a 7-month-old. And that's the short bio.
How would your leadership style and personality create bipartisan results in the legislature next year if elected?
Well, one of the things that I pride myself on is a willingness and ability to listen. And I think that's something you learn as you campaign around the state. That if you don't listen and you assume that you know everything, you will quickly find out that you don't. And so while I believe in standing firm on issues that I believe in, such as lowering the size of state government, slashing jobs that I don't think we need, I also believe that most people have the best interests of their constituencies and their districts at heart. And so, my view is somewhat collaborative, but also with a focus on accomplishing my mission and my vision for the state.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Colonel Wade, in March of 2010, Democratic leaders in the House proposed a $200 million tax increase on New Mexicans by, in part, raising the New Mexico gross receipts tax by 1/8% and a sales tax on food, among other things. How would you have approached the state's deficit in 2010? And if elected, Colonel Wade, how would you propose to balance the state budget going forward?
That's tough to cram into 90 seconds, but let me just tell you, we would not have raised taxes if I'd been the governor, period. Because there's enough waste, fraud, abuse, and unnecessary spending in the $4.5 billion that the state's got right now. You can't convince me we don't have 10% of that we shouldn't be spending money on. And there are things we spend money on, folks, that we don't need to spend money on. So how am I going to balance this thing? I'm going to divide the budget into two pots. Just like you run your businesses and you run your families. Need to have, nice to have. Essential government services that are need to have are going to get funded at 100%. What's left over is nice to have. And that's where the rest of the money will go. We'll restore our rainy day fund. We will raid these permanent funds that we've been doing. We'll stop loaning money to companies as far that we do as far as so-called economic development, and a lot of other absolutely irresponsible management practices that are going on in our state government today. Balancing a budget will be difficult, but not impossible. I'm going to do it.
Representative Arnold-Jones, how would you have approached balancing the budget in 2009 and if elected, how we balance the budget going forward?
Well, since I was there, let me tell you what, I was tipped. So the first thing as governor, I would make sure that I talked to the leadership and made sure they understood that I will not sign any bill that is unconstitutional. The revenue bill that was passed was entirely unconstitutional. You have a right to know what we are passing, and I'm sure you have overlooked the tax back part. Any of you itemized here in this audience? Yeah, well, you're going to lose all of those benefits. That bill was a tax back bill. We could not pass it in the regular session. It was entirely unconstitutional to do it that way. Compounded by a governor who then went in and line item vetoed a revenue bill. For you to understand where you stand in this government, your government has to obey the rules. Now, just a fine point, there were a lot of things that we could do in terms of cutting the budget. Some very simple things were, there are over 3,000 positions that are unfilled that should have been pulled out of the budget. That act alone would have eliminated the need to raise taxes in this revenue bill. And the rest of it, if I sound irritating, it was really awful. Watch my webcam. Thank you.
Mr. Domenici, how would you have approached the state deficit in 09 and if elected going forward balance?
I wouldn't have raised taxes. I would have opposed the tax increase. The state government needs to operate like a business. It needs to provide quality services. Its focus needs to be essential services, safety, and basic infrastructure. We need to get out of the speculation business, which we've had several major projects that are speculative, and we have some ongoing projects that are essentially out competing with speculative private capital, private equity companies. When we're not in that business, we don't need to be in that business. So running the state as a business, we would look at our revenues, we would decrease our number of employees to be proportionate to what our population base is, what our expected tax revenues are, and we would I would start with one of the things Janice mentioned, which are the employees, and that bill that Governor Richardson vetoed, that probably would have taken care of this band-aid that we have. But in the future, we have to adhere to fundamental business practices as a state government, and it will benefit everyone that does business with the state government.
Thank you. Mr. Turner, how would you balance the budget in 09 and how will you balance the budget going forward if elected?
I actually spent the first entire day of the legislative session this year standing outside in a snowstorm with our former Governor Gary Johnson protesting against new taxes, and I have a newfound respect for protesters. I certainly would not have raised taxes. I think, from my understanding, we have $1.4 billion in unexpended capital outlay, projects that have been, funding has been appropriated for but have not been spent. I will pull as much of that money back as possible. If communities have done without a swimming pool for a couple of years, they can probably do without a swimming pool for another couple of years. I would begin by eliminating unnecessary state agencies. We've had countless state agencies that have been created under this administration, many doing duplicative services. We have effectively 2 agencies that do public safety, Homeland Security and Public Safety, 2 education departments. We have cultural affairs, which is now a full-on department. We need to shrink the size of state government in a very severe way. I would also eliminate almost all the political appointees that we have here. Gary Johnson left office with about 167 political appointees. We've had as much as 600 to 800 of them under this administration at a cost of $30 to $40 million a year. The state employees that we're talking about cutting, we have somewhere in the range of 5,000 more state employees. We need to eliminate eliminate as many of those as possible, and over time that'll happen through attrition. It'll save us between $200 and $300 million a year. So there are places to cut, and to cut immediately.
Thank you, Mr. Kerner. Representative Arnold-Jones, this is a good segue. The current administration has grown the state jobs by at least 30%, according to some accounts. Adding employees to the